At the end of the game against Chelsea, Thomas Frank was blanked by Jed Spence and Mickey van der Ven. Tottenham Hotspur had an XG of 0.05 against Chelsea, the lowest in Tottenham's Premier League history. Now, Thomas Frank has come out and said, every team I have coached, we have scored a lot of goals. It will happen here. And Tottenham Hotspur are currently fourth in the Premier League table, but only 4 points ahead of 12th place in the league table. Hi everyone, hope you're well. Chris Cowlin here. This is another edition of Tottenham News where I'll be going through all of the latest Spurs news, rumours and reports. If you're watching on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button, like, share and comment below. And if you're listening to this on an audio platform, please do hit the follow button and leave a review if you can. Now, on Saturday evening, Tottenham Hotspur lost 1-0 at home to Chelsea at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, João Pedro scoring the only goal of the game. Now, after the match, Thomas Frank entered the pitch, walked up to Mickey van der Ven and Jed Spence and appeared to get blanked by both of them. In his press conference after the game, he was asked about the incident and is it acceptable for this to happen? And Thomas Frank said all of the players are, of course, frustrated. They all would like to do well. They would like to win the game. They would like to perform well. So I understand that. I think it is about which is difficult to be consistent in good times and bad times. That is why I went round to the fans as I did. It is more fun when we win. I can tell you that. I understand why you asked the question, but I think that is one of the small issues. We have Mickey van der Ven and Jed Spence who are doing everything they can. They perform well. And have done so far this season, and everyone is frustrated. We do things in a different way, so I don't think it is a big problem. In the press conference after the game, Thomas Frank was asked about the XG, which was 0.05 against Chelsea on Saturday evening. Thomas Frank said, I would say that, of course, hurts massively. I have never been in charge of a team that has created that little in one game, never. So that, of course, I will look into what we can do to make it better. But I think that's one thing. I think everything is a little bit linked. And today, yeah, we didn't hit the level. Now, another key point from Thomas Frank's post-match press conference after the Chelsea game on Saturday, who was asked, can you see the team evolving attacking-wise, and what can you say to the fans to give them confidence that the team can be more creative? Thomas Frank said, I think the thing is that all games are a little bit different. I think that there were signs of it against Everton away, against Villa at home, against Newcastle away, and today there's not too many signs of it. Thomas Frank then went on to say, I think every team I have coached has scored a lot of goals. It will happen again in the future here. Now, my thoughts on everything in this episode, and of course it is mainly about the Chelsea game, losing 1-0 again to Chelsea at home. Chelsea have an exceptional record at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, the best record actually of any away team. They have now beaten us 6 out of 7 visits, and it is a really, really poor record. And of course, we have a very poor record at Stamford Bridge, only winning once at Stamford Bridge in Premier League history since the Premier League began back in 1992. Now, so much to talk about from Saturday's game. The disappointment from the performance, of course, the result. Yes, Tottenham Hotspur are sitting in 4th right now. But let's be frank and honest about it. That is probably a false position for Spurs, given our performances this season. We haven't been entertaining, and we're only 4 points above 12th place. So, you know, 1 or 2 poor results, you know, Spurs could suddenly be down to mid-table, and it is very, very tight in there at the moment. Now, at the full-time whistle, Thomas Frank, as he normally does, walking to the centre of the pitch to shake hands with everyone. And fair play to Thomas Frank. He does actually walk around to the crowd, whether we win, whether we draw, whether we lose. He does exactly the same thing. And from what I understand, he did exactly the same thing at Brentford, year in, year out, game by game. And, Thomas Frank is doing exactly the same. Now, he didn't even get to the centre spot. And Jed Spence, Mickey van der Ven passed him. He clearly said something along the lines of, go over to the fans, applaud the fans. Jed Spence and Mickey van der Ven pretty much blanked him and walked straight past him. And Andreas Georgesson, who is our set-piece coach, he went up to the pair of them as well, and they blanked him as well, walked straight down the tunnel, and both of them looked extremely unhappy. Now, that is not the way that the Spurs players should act, in my opinion. A couple of players tried to do exactly the same when we went out and crashed out of the Carabao Cup midweek against Newcastle after near 5,000 fans had made that big trip up to Newcastle and back. And then there were no trains back, after that game. And the fans spend a lot of money and are very, very dedicated to following our team. And, the one thing that the team can do, especially when we lose, is come over and applaud the fans and give them that at least. And this is the second game running, and I am a little bit disappointed in Mickey van der Ven, I must say, because he was captain for the day. He is part of the leadership group. He should know that, you need to do these things, whether you win, lose or draw. I get the frustration. Of course, we are all frustrated, losing the game, particularly in the manner and fashion that we did. Jed Spence, of course, disappointed by him as well. Thomas Frank didn't seem too bothered about it at the end of the game when he was asked in the press conference about it. XG, he certainly was bothered about. 0.05, that is absolutely shocking. And George Sessions from the Press Association asked him a very vital question, in my opinion, and I would have probably asked a similar thing had I been in that press conference, because how can it happen? How can it happen? Spurs are 1-0 down at half-time, and the second half, we did not have a shot on target. In that entire game, we had one shot on target, and that was through Mohamed Kudus at the end of the first half. Now, the whole of the second half, we are chasing the game, and we did not have a shot on target in that second half. That is unacceptable to me. This style of football under Thomas Frank, I'm really, really questioning. And I'm not convinced by the football that we have played this season. I'm not convinced that we are going to be entertained under this manager or with this squad at the moment. So things drastically need to change. The final third, as I've said in previous episodes, really, really does worry me. He went with Cowlin up front on Saturday against Chelsea. And of course, we finished the game with the likes of Richarlison and Brennan Johnson up front. And we just do not look a threatening side in that final third at all. And that really, really does worry me. And, one or two injuries, then what do we do? I don't know what the answer is at the moment. It's all well and good that fans, like myself say, oh, it's okay, we'll wait for the January transfer window. A January transfer window is a very, very difficult window at the best of times. But the lack of creativity and, to have an XG of 0.05, even when we recorded the podcast straight after the game, I think some of the guests thought that was an actual mistake, but it clearly wasn't. One shot on target in a game against one of your biggest rivals is unacceptable. And Thomas Frank, in my opinion, has come out a couple of times and said that we have played well when we haven't. And he has come out and said that we have played well in the final third and we were creative when we weren't in certain games. That worries me. This gives me Nuno Espirito Santo vibes, and that is not a good thing. I am not sitting here saying I want the manager gone. I want major changes, within, the management structure. I'm saying that things need to change. Thomas Frank certainly needs to do things differently because we haven't been creative enough in recent games, and this is a real worrying sign. Mohamed Kudus, of course, can produce in that final third, but take him out of the equation, I don't know where we are with the creativity in this side. I know a lot of people are saying, well, we're missing James Maddison, we're missing Dejan Kulusevski. These are long-term injuries. James Maddison may not even feature this season for us, and if he does, it'll be right at the back end of the season. Dejan Kulusevski apparently is a couple of months away. So there is a real problem with creativity. Thomas Frank needs to sort this, and quick. The goal that we conceded was really poor. Mistakes from Jed Spence, mistakes from Javi Simmons, and then Mickey van der Ven. And then, of course, João Pedro scored. The only good thing I can say about Saturday, actually, is another great performance from our goalkeeper, Vicario, who, of course, has made some really good saves in recent games, including the Monaco game, the Everton game, and now, of course, this Chelsea game. Vicario actually kept the scoreline down. It could have been a very, very embarrassing scoreline at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday. Bergvall, of course, going off after 4 or 5 minutes was a huge frustration to him, the player, and of course to Thomas Frank. Javi Simmons then had to come on. Javi Simmons came on after 4, 5, 6 minutes, and then of course was then replaced later on in the game by Wilson Odobert in the 73rd minute. He had a really tough game. Javi Simmons needs to work on his physicality, upper body strength, and at the moment he is being tackled far too easily for my liking. And that must be very frustrating for the manager, particularly when Thomas Frank has probably thought that he has brought in a real creative player in Javi Simmons. And at the moment he is really struggling. Didn't even get into the starting 11, and when he did, he was then subbed off. So yeah, there's a lot of frustration. Romero obviously came on later on in the game in the 60th minute for Kevin Danso. In my opinion, if he was going to come on as a sub in the 60th minute, you may as well have started him. It may have been a different outcome with Romero's leadership qualities on the pitch. And every single time I looked down at Romero warming up, whilst he was a sub, he was shaking his head and very animated on the touchline because he clearly wanted to be a part of that game. Vicario's even come out and said it was a bad day for us. These bad days, though, cannot continue. We've got another big week ahead. Copenhagen in the Champions League on Tuesday. I do expect Spurs to win that. The Manchester United game on Saturday, that is going to be a tough game. Of course, they're unbeaten in their last 4. They've won 3 and they drew against Nottingham Forest 2-2 on Saturday afternoon. But Thomas Frank has come out and said, every team I've coached, we have scored a lot of goals. It will happen here. My big question is, how will it happen? And who will make it happen? Those are my biggest questions at the moment, because this style of play I'm not convinced by. We are so heavily reliant on set pieces, and the set pieces actually on Saturday were pretty poor. And same for the Newcastle game as well. And it really aggravates and frustrates me when we go out of a cup competition as well, particularly in the manner and the fashion that we did on Wednesday. But I'm hoping, I really am hoping that Thomas Frank turns this around. I'm really hoping that he can make Tottenham into an entertaining team. I'm hoping that we can score a lot of goals. But is this squad good enough to be scoring goals in every game, creating more and more opportunities? We're lacking creativity big time at the moment. But as I said, a huge week coming up. Copenhagen and Manchester United. Let's hope that Spurs can get 2 wins. And then, of course, it will be the international break. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're watching on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button, like, share and comment below. And if you're listening to this on an audio platform, please do hit the follow button and leave a review if you can. And please do let me know how you are feeling right now as a Tottenham Hotspur fan. Of course, as I mentioned, Spurs are sat in 4th in the Premier League table right now, but we could be mid-table very soon if we don't get results in the Premier League. And the home form, is it a worry for you? Because I tell you what, going to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium at the moment, the atmosphere isn't wonderful. People were leaving early. People were leaving at around the 70, 75-minute mark against Chelsea because of the lack of creativity. But let me know how you are feeling right now.